Like, yeah, I get that, yeah.
And don't close it tight. Just so everyone's aware, this meeting is being recorded, and if you speak during the meeting, it's your way of saying that you are allowing it to be recorded and retransmitted over the Culver YouTube site. And can I have a roll call?
John Rogers, present. Gary Parrott, present. Sally McCarty,
Present.
Bill Clevenger,
Present.
Paul Benedictus, present. Karen Schumann is not.
I'll stand for the pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can I have approval of the August 16th, 2021 regular meeting minutes?
So moved.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Aye. And the other, I have been going nuts and I didn't get it finished or didn't get it sent out. Town manager reports, the next item on the agenda. Jenny?
Yes, first I want to cover something that's not on the town manager report, and that is we have a task force working on broadband fiber. Gary sits on that task force. We had our third meeting last week, and as part of our process, we're getting ready to engage with providers. We have scheduled September 28th to do that engagement. We basically want fiber providers interested in potentially bringing fiber to Culver to come present to us, let us ask some questions, go through a Q&A, and we believe that process will help us form an RFQ, and we got some good advice on that. So we're kind of following along with the Indiana broadband process for doing this sort of work. And I just wanted to kind of update you guys on that because we have Redevelopment Commission members as well as council. Bill Clevenger is also on that task force.
Jenny, do you have a timeline when you think you'll have an RFP out and a response back?
We'd like this year to get it done.
So by
Sort of working
December?
with a sense of urgency to see if we can at least get the RFP done by then. And I feel like we're wanting to meet frequently and get it done. So, and so far I've had two that have said absolutely yes. I have one that has said no, we're not interested. So, and I'll write that up for the next town manager report and fill you in on some of those details. Right now, I'm just kind of keeping the task force in the loop on which ones are saying yes and which are saying.
Okay.
I think you'll be interested in that. The TIF review process has been underway. Paul and Bill have put significant time into this, had meetings with county officials working on this, as well as DLGF, Rhonda Cook, who has some expertise on this. We had meetings last week and the week before. Paul's going to do an update with you guys on that. It's led into many discussions about other things outside of the TIF properties, such as onboarding new Redevelopment Commission members, educating people on the process, on how this works. So we are opening that can of worms as well, which I think is a good thing. And along the way, Paul's been documenting a lot of notes that we've been taking as we review these properties, some of which have to be resolved through expertise outside of us, but I'll let Paul cover
You made it
that.
sound much better than what I'm going to report. Here's a spoiler alert. I got nothing but bad news.
Yeah.
I'm serious. So you
Well-
made it sound much better. I got nothing but bad news.
Anyway, So Lake Max Phase 2 is the next project that this group has been funding the match for. You have probably seen some signs and stakes go up and a notification from Karen on some of our communication channels. Construction starts this week. NDOT had a substantial completion date of October for this project, which is completely unrealistic. So that will change. But this project is going to work in 2 phases. Washington Street out here, all the way till we get over to Plymouth Street, the back alleyways is going to be the first phase of the project. And then South Plymouth Street on into South Main Street will be second phase. It's actually broken out into 4 phases, but we've kind of merged 2 and 2 because the construction company, equipment-wise, what they need here, wanted to break it out in 2 separate phases. Their equipment is currently sitting on town property down by the old Eagle Shack that we tore down, so you've probably seen that there as well. The stakes and all the markings on the road are, NDOT requires that as you get into a construction zone, you have to have signage literally everywhere. So we've had some calls where people think we've changed the route or we have 20 routes now because they're seeing random stakes. But anyway, that's going on just as an FYI. Lake Max Trail Phase 3, we are still working on this. There's a utility agreement now in place that Jim Clevenger has approved. That's going over to the academy. We want that utility agreement separate from the actual trail agreement for a number of reasons, but just wanted to keep you in the loop on where it's at. State and Jefferson Street Trail, there's no change on that as of now. That's still going through environmental and design. Tamarack property annexation. I think you guys are well up to speed on that now, I hope at least. It's a complicated project, but I'm glad we're all there. The Economic Development Initiative, we've reset the date. I've got a typo here. It's October 2021, not 31. We're not doing that for 11 days. Cheryl and I have had several conversations about agenda. And we think we're ready to present that to council at the next meeting. I'll send you guys a copy of that, see if you want to have any input on that. We are discussing the idea of using the school. They're not in session during that time. We want to have a large enough venue to break out into groups. And I've talked to the council about providing lunch and coffee service and that sort of thing. And they seem very on board with that. So we'll get them some logistic information on cost. But we plan for this to be a pretty significant 2-day investment on time. And we are trying to schedule at least 1 evening in there. So for people who have to be at work and can't attend, Cheryl was very flexible about the time involved. Regional Stellar Park Project. This one is currently in the application phase. Though Oprah sets aside that money, we still have to apply for it. And part of that application process involves an income survey. The council just recently signed contracts with Shannon McLeod of Project Priority to do that income survey. So you may actually get one of those yourself. Basically, if we're required to do an income survey, prove that at least 51% of the people who take that survey are low to moderate income. And when it comes to Stellar, Oprah is a little more flexible about the income survey, and we're hoping that that will work out for us. That application should go in by end of October per Shannon's schedule, and then we would probably receive award of the funds by end of November and start construction in the spring. So that one, you guys have a $60,000 match with Amber's park budget match. So I'll keep you apprised of how that one's going along. And outside of that broadband fiber project, that's all I've got. But if you have questions, let me know because I have to go to yet another meeting in Plymouth.
Okay, any questions?
I have none.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right,
Thank you very much.
This is the update.
thank you. And I will get back with you. All right. All right, see you guys.
Take care. The next item on the agenda is financial report. I have a motion to approve the August 21st financial report. I actually didn't get a chance to read it.
So moved.
Seconds.
I did read it. That's the one, that was that one that you posted, that was a spreadsheet that you sent out. Right? That's
Yeah.
email.
Could have been posted and.
Email, yeah.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
And I'll abstain since I didn't get a chance to read it. Next on the agenda is approval of claims. I have a motion to approve claims.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yes, I could say it's the total $31,144.35. So it's approved. The next item on the agenda is TIF review project. That's Bill and Paul. So
Paul, go ahead.
All right.
I'll let
pass this
two of
out.
you.
I wasn't kidding when I said it was all bad news. So I'm gonna put the screen out there, copies that people in the public want to see. These are copies here to help yourself. We all started this. You want to get the big screen on so. I'm just trying to be happy if I can get the technology to work. There we go. Down. No, nothing ever works the way it's supposed to.
Huh.
My plan B, if this doesn't work, when I switch this, I have to go off the sheets I handed you. I work off my own screen. 10 seconds. Thank you. All right. I'm going to go off my own screen and talk to you guys about this. What I'd like to do is, as I go through this, I'd like to hold the initial questions for just everybody on the CRC, and those are technical questions, clarifying questions about if you want to understand what base value is or some of those other questions, then we can go to the general discussion. You see the agenda, the bottom line up front, progress, good news, bad news. I got to give you the bottom line up front. The TIFs have been neglected and mismanaged for years. This has resulted in the loss of at least $500,000 in TIF revenue. This, and I spent a good part of the weekend pulling together all the work that we had done and going through this. There's major categories through it. I'll take you through them, but we've never evaluated our TIFs and reviewed the properties, and this is the result. As Jenny alluded to, since August 3rd, myself, Bill, and Jenny have met weekly. We reviewed 100% of the TIF properties. We identified problems and issues. We sought out county help from the assessor's office and the auditor's office. We went to the state level. Rhonda Cook out of RAI. We talked to AIM, and then we also talked to Phil Facenda out of Barnes and Thornburg, and Heidi Ausbach out of Baker Tilly. Here's the good news. We didn't wait till next year because then it gets worse. That's the good news. We can change some of the things by the end of this year, which could improve our TIFs in 2023. The bad news, TIFs have been neglected and mismanaged. They're a mess. CRC has lost money on their TIF properties. We failed to capture new significant growth in properties. We failed to manage our tax abatement TIF revenue to the benefit of the town. I have to say personally, if this were a business and I had these results, I would have fired the management team responsible for it. That's how I feel about this. So I'm going to give you those three buckets, the three categories of the bad news. First, lost money on TIFs. In general, TIF is started and you have a base value that's assessed, and the idea is that you're going to be able to do improvements that drive the incremental value up. And there will be some properties in there that should come out because they've changed hands or they've gone south, and they become a penalty to your incremental value because their base value is dropped below. So I've got three examples here, just letting you know there are many more. The Water Tower and the Vanguard properties, both those during the life of this TIF have transferred to the town. So they're no tax value and the base value is dropped to zero. So it's got to be paid for somewhere else because there was an initial base value that went to all of our taxable units. JD1 owns the vacant lot right in the corner on Main Street, downtown Main Street in Jefferson, or maybe it's Washington. Got it reassessed years ago in a different type of category of property, dropped the value. We should have caught that. It's costing us money to have it. Bestie donated the property between the dentist office on Lakeshore Drive and which bank is that? Monterey Bank.
Monterey Bank,
A couple
yeah.
acres. They donated to Culver Academy. Culver Academy is a nonprofit. That was I think 60 to 70,000 base value property that's now worth zero. And it didn't come out. They're costing us each year. Just to give you a concept, understand what's going on, for the last from 2017 to 2021, TIF 1, which is our larger TIF, has only grown by 14%, 26 million in value to 29 million in incremental assessed value. That TIF, almost 2/3 of it is made up of residential properties, condos, all the condo and PUDs. I got to tell you, they've grown more than 14% in 5 years in our town. If anything grows like a rocket ship in our town is real estate. So there's some other things that are drawing this. The second TIF, TIF 2, has decreased from 5 million to $250,000 in 5 years in incremental assessed value. It's driven by ACPI, which is now Cabinet Works, but that has come down by 95%. So I'm not a scientist of this, but I would tell you that we are heading in the wrong direction. This is, and I'll give you the follow-up on what we should do, but I'm a bad news guy right now, and this is a lot of bad news. The next is failure to capture significant growth properties in the TIF. Early on, the Riggings, which are 19-unit condos, and Pearl Street condos, which are 6-unit condos, should have been in the TIF. Just like the Cove, just like Maple Ridge, they drive a lot of value. That should have been added early on. That's probably $250,000 in incremental revenue, actual revenue that we could have had. More recently, from the last couple of years, from 2017 to 2020, we missed $1.5 million in incremental TIF and incremental assessed value, totaling averaging another 15 million out of the rest of this year. I just picked 4 properties or more. Odom Funeral Home, not in the TIF. $84,000 in incremental value that we're never capturing. It's too late for us to capture it. Dollar General, they came, they got annexed into the town. They built what they built, increased the value of it by $644,000. We never added it to the TIF. We're not going to get that money. The BP, I can remember having conversations here asking, well, we're adding to that, but they're in the TIF. Of course they are. They're on Main Street. They're not in the TIF. Almost $200,000 in incremental improvement that they've made that we're not going to get. And then the Forest Place Senior Apartments. recently they did about $300,000 increase in their incremental TIF value. We're not getting it because we didn't add them to the TIF. We don't have a process right now to review, or I don't even know what we do to, when we see a developing property, that we've added them into the TIF. Those four, a little over $250,000, the remaining life of this TIF that we will not get in revenue. The last one, tax abatement and TIF revenue. So our TIF 1 expires in 12 years. TIF 2 expires in 14 years. It actually shows on paper, it adds a year, but they expire in like January or February, so they really don't last the year. We have given abatements appropriately. We've given abatements of up to 10 years on properties as people, if they've done investments. I chose one of the examples, Sandhill Paddocks. It's not about the abatement. It's about the math on it. We've awarded 4.75 million abatements over 10 years. 72 units built. We abate the incremental assessed value property tax. So in 2030 and 2031, we'll begin to enjoy that. And that's about $80,000 a year for us in TIF revenue. We invested almost $300,000 directly in CRC infrastructure to build that. The TIF only has 2.5 more years to run when we start getting money back. So we'll get 200,000 back out of the 300 we invested. I don't know if anyone looked at that. There are opportunities. CRC needs to plan for a new TIF. We're well over half the life of our TIFs right now. We're running out of the ability to invest in a new property, recover our investment, and actually increase and get more revenue so we can make bigger investments and grow. I don't know what else to say about that. What I can say next is what we have to do. We have to complete, I believe we have to complete a TIF review and a TIF amendment process. I've reached out to Phil Facenda, well, before going back, that I've reached out to Sally, you gave me Jeff Rowe as our contact. He's more of a different utilities guy. So I reached out to Heidi Almsbaugh, spoke to her this morning out of Baker Tilly. They do all this. You know, we've been hiring, we've used them in the past. We use them every year to do our base visualization. They do all these other things. I've asked her to put a proposal together. And she said to do a TIF amendment, probably be about $5,000 plus the work through each of the properties to validate what the work we've done. There's a cost, I think it's cost of resources, there's an expense with a not to exceed. So she's going to put a proposal together. But there's a resource that we will use, have to use to get this done if we want to fix this. The next is, I believe we have to engage Barnes and Thornburg, and that's Phil Facenda. He's already sent me, that's the outline of what has to happen, the different step processes that has to happen in order for us to get this done by the end of the year. Otherwise, we're already set. You know, all the mistakes that we have in front of us now are going to impact us in 2022. Those numbers are already set. If we don't make any changes, the numbers and revenue that we're going to get in 2023 will be set as of January 1st of 2022. So we have to get all this done between now and the end of the year. We have to have another firm come in and take a look at the work. I would tell you that Heidi said we did good work in the initial slogging through with it, but they have the ability to go through and quantify and do all the prep work that actually goes to the auditor's office. And then we have a legal requirement with Barnes and Thornburg. We have a legal requirement for amending the TIF to do this. And then Ginny has already asked Phil Facenda for a bid, a proposal on how he would do our work. Here's what CRC has to do, in my view, the must do. You've got to engage Baker Tilly to validate the findings and identify any others, and I'm sure there are more. I mean, I said there was $500,000 in lost revenue. That's not counting the riggings and the Pearl Street. That was too old. It's well, you know, I wish I'd made a math mistake. I asked people I spoke to people and said, you know, Baker Tilly, I spoke to Facenda, I said, tell me I'm doing something wrong here, that we're doing something wrong. They even come back and said, no, you're way off. It's a mess. We have to engage Baker Tilly, we have to engage Thornburg. If we have to hold special sessions, I don't think we only have so many times between now and the end of the year to get this done. We have to have a special CRC session to review engagement letters and then authorize the engagement to execute it. And we have to meet with Planning Commission. We have to get this pushed through. Otherwise, the problem's going to continue. I would tell you personally, this just makes me sick. At first, I thought this, I was going to push for TIFs. I pushed for the TIF review. And I thought, we'll just clean this up with, because I was thinking about the evil check and maybe a couple other things. But as we poured through this, it just made me sick to look at this, to see the extent of what it is. And with that, I'll stop and open up to any questions that you guys have.
Well, Paul, let me just add one thing too that we've discovered, the two of us. We've had meetings with the, there are two county offices that are directly involved in what we're doing. One of which is the assessor's office and the other is the auditor's office. We've held meetings with the assessor's office. We're waiting for a date to have one with the auditor's office. What we found is that really there's a lot of gray area for those two offices. The assessor's office probably was as helpful as what we're going to get.
Mm-hmm.
But it's anyone's guess what we're going to get out of the auditor's office, because they have a new TIF deputy up there. And they seem to be stonewalling us as far as an appointment. We asked for an appointment here at the end of the month, and we've heard nothing. So I think it's imperative that we really seriously look at the Baker Tilly involvement, because we're not going to get it.
Yeah.
We're not going to get it from up in Plymouth. That's just, I think, a fact. You agree, Paul?
I agree. I think we scared the auditor's office.
Yeah.
When we talked to them.
I think we've scared the auditor.
Yeah. And we were told there's not a depth of expertise.
Yeah.
But, and I would give the assessor's office high marks. Debbie Dunning did a great job of walking us through this. She did a great job. And she also told us, here's the other thing, 2022, our part of the county has a 100% review of all properties. They're doing their audit. They'll come down and review every property in the town. Won't be trending. They'll be doing the analysis, and that has a direct impact on us. So that part's fine. But again, this is a mess.
When you spoke to Baker Tilly about what you had done, you and Bill, did they come back to you and say, generally our towns or our people that are in charge of TIFs have a certain protocol? Every year they go through A, B, C, D, and F.
Sure.
You kind of created this, you and Bill created this from scratch.
I'll take more credit for the spreadsheet than Bill,
Yeah.
being honest about that. Yeah. So let me tell you what happened. So Baker Tilly recommends that you review your TIFs to three to four times every 3 to 4 years. They recommend that. I said, we haven't done it. We haven't done it since the beginning of our TIFs. We've added, we've never reviewed. So since 2004, we haven't done that. They also say they can do as much work as we want them to do. They do the initial minimum required analysis of, here's your general base value, incremental assessed value, and overall assessed value, but they can do the property work. They can do the work and you have to ask them to do it. We never asked them. I had a belief, and I just want to say it out loud, that our leadership viewed Baker Tilly as an expense. to be minimized instead of an asset to be used. And so we were more concerned about, CRC was more concerned about how little do we spend versus are they doing the work for us? Because they do this work. I mean, they said, we do this work, we do this information, we take it through to the county assessor's office and the auditor's office. And then I've had others tell me too that they hire a firm like Baker Tilly every year because they don't trust their auditor's office to get it right.
Sure, sure.
So it's, to me, this is a $30 million portfolio that we are required to manage for the benefit of the town. And this came up short.
Right. So with the lost revenues that you're projecting on the slide, over $250,000.
Yeah.
Just seems like a no-brainer that leadership would have, engaged a firm like Baker Tilly to do this review on our behalf.
You'll have to ask those people that did. You're right. It does. We're bonded, right? We're required to, we're working with money. I think we're the only, except for council, we're the only other group that's bonded. I don't think BCA is or any of the other groups are. There's a reason for that. We're working with significant money.
I'm not 100% sure we're bonded.
We are. We are bonded.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And this has been a process of running into a series of brick walls, and it shouldn't have been. But this is there's no good news. I guess the only good news is we found it now instead of next year.
Yeah. Yeah, I would definitely, I guess, is her name Heidi?
Heidi.
So she's putting a proposal together?
She is.
Okay.
And Phil Facenda is putting one together because there's a legal requirement in amending a TIF and the financial backdrop. What properties do you have in there? What should you drop? And they have all the data to do that.
And Heidi, Culver's been her client for a while, right?
Yeah.
So did she mention when you spoke to her, hey, I kind of brought this up that my other, units of government kind of.
They say it all the time. You can't force somebody who doesn't want to spend the money.
No, I understand.
Yeah. And I'm not being,
The former leadership was educated that this service existed. And they
Yes.
dismissed it.
I'm not 100% sure.
Well, we can always go back and audit their reports.
Yeah, I'm not.
I don't think.
Yeah.
Well, I would say I found the audit requirement in the handbook. That's why I've been pushing. That's why I pushed to do the TIF review. I saw it in the handbook and I saw we've never done it. So yeah, that one we get every year. We can run down that alley too to see about, was somebody supposed to tell us? I think the onus of responsibility falls on the CRC to manage its properties.
Well,
In any event,
Yeah.
I'd be a proponent of engaging them the short time that we have.
I asked both of them, because again, between our last meeting and this one, I've been doing a lot of work on this. I told both of them we have to, we were right about the timeline, but we didn't even know the deadline. We didn't even know the flipping deadline until talking to certain, running into people and pulling this information together. They both are confident if we are able to schedule our meetings that all the data can be done, all the information and validation can be done to meet the deadline of December 31st.
Thanks for all the time you put in, Paul, on this, and it seems like
Yeah.
a good practice for us to be doing this every 3-4 years. So that's the good news.
Yeah.
It wasn't part of our practice. We know it needs to be moving forward. A question I had was around, we failed to capture some significant growth properties in TIFs by adding them. I was under the impression like we would have to create a new TIF if we wanted to do
Not
that.
at all.
We can add TIF.
You can add a property to a TIF.
Midway through the TIF.
Yeah, you can drop a property.
I knew that.
The property you can add or drop, the property will not exceed the life of the TIF. But we've done that in 2008 and we did that in 2014. We added properties. No one's ever looked, we haven't looked at, our TIFs are over half their life now, you know, and you aware of the issues that we run out of time, we run out of money to be able to fund something. The idea is we're funding in a development in this time period, which will bring in X more than we put into it. So we have more money to fund other bigger developments. And if I were to say, I feel like the leadership is managing this as a grant versus an investment that grows. Like we have X amount of dollars coming in, as long as we have a couple of dollars coming in, we'll spend it, versus this is what we're entrusted with. This is our investment base, and our job is to grow and maximize this for bigger investments. That's what it felt like as I was going through this. I'm just saying what it felt like, because again, there's a lot here.
Well, I appreciate you doing all the work that you've done.
So again, the
Yeah.
last page is stuff that needs to be done. I would like the ability on behalf of CRC to continue to speak to Phil Casenda and Heidi, get their proposals, and then have Sally call a special session if we have to do that.
Yeah.
In order to get the review of the proposals and get a quorum, so we can engage them, spend the money and
Yeah.
engage them. And we have two council members here. To me, this is a big thing that you should be communicating with. And if you want me to do this presentation then the next council meeting, I'm glad to do it. But this is a lot of news, and to me, this is next to what the town collects in taxes. This is the next biggest revenue generator for the town and its future.
I think you're looking for a motion then
Yes.
that would allow you to pursue further engagement with Baker Tilly and Barnes and Thornburg.
Yes, I am.
Karen, is a motion required?
I just want
Motion
permission to go.
required, Karen.
Because it would be to spend money.
I'm getting the proposals to bring them to you guys. That's what I'm, unless you're gonna say, no, I want to think about it. What I'm doing right now is going flat out to get Baker Tilly. They're already working on it. I'll get the Baker Tilly proposal and the Barnes and Thornburg. Yeah, Barnes and Thornburg proposals.
I don't know that you need a motion, but it probably wouldn't hurt to have a motion.
I'll make a motion with Paul to continue engaging with Barnes and Thornburg and Baker Tilly, to ensure that we can meet our 12/31 deadline, to ensure that our TIFs are optimized.
I second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
You got
You're
some extra.
optimistic saying optimized. I'm talking about stopping the bleeding and getting it out. Yeah.
Well,
Tourniquet approach.
okay. That works. The next thing on the agenda is update from broadband meeting, Gary.
Yeah, I think Jenny.
I think Jenny covered a lot of it.
Yeah. So we're meeting with various providers on the 28th. I've got my email on the phone that I got to them about throughout the town. We're determining who's interested, which these costs are.
Okay.
So it's a working process. Karen's on there with me. David
Harley.
Yeah, Harlan is
Yeah.
on there with me. And Jenny's been very good in lining up these meetings with various providers.
That's good.
I think MediaCom was reluctant to come to those meetings at this point, so we're talking to other providers.
Well, they have a track record that makes you not even want to invite them, but yeah, it was nice that you offered.
So we will have much more to report. If we can gauge the room during those meetings with providers and report something in our September CRC. And that's progressing.
You mean October meeting?
Yes, I rephrased that. October, I'm sorry.
Well,
I wanted to give Paul another month.
Yeah, sorry.
I wanted to make sure you guys
Tick-tock.
optimize.
Tick tock, tick tock, yeah.
okay. We actually have no new business other than continuing with our reviews and broadband and TIF. I'm assuming that you didn't get any new requests. Okay. So the next item on the agenda after new business is public input. Is there any public input? Go ahead.
Two questions. Oh, question on the amendments with the TIFs. I heard you say TIF 1 district is 12 more years. In an amendment, can you extend the maturity? Can you?
No, but you can take a property out of a TIF that's not being developed right now, but may be developed in a couple of years, and put it into a new TIF, which the next year, which gives it a 25-year run. So, sorry, Kevin, I'm going to use you as an example. We knew well before 2020, 2021, when you were completing, that we were doing that work in Sand Hill. 2018, we could have taken your properties out, formed a new TIF in 2019, which would run 25 more years. Also, we'd have a revenue stream that would be very different than we have. That's an unforced error in my book.
Good brought up.
Yeah, I wish somebody had listened. It's an expensive error.
So
Yeah.
the other question, I've got properties in the TIF district, but I never asked to be in the TIF district or be. And I was wondering, so if you took mine out now, and then put it back in next year?
Into a new TIF. If we did a new TIF next year, you'd have a 25-year run on the life of the TIF.
Okay.
Doesn't change your taxes. Either way, it doesn't advantage you for coming and being inter alia TIF. It gives us a new run as a town. Just when we're making economic development decisions, it gives us the ability to do that because we have 25 years to consider what investment we make and recover on that.
So if a developer came and started talking to you next year, and you start talking about TIF, even though he's not going to break ground for another year, because you got to go on permitting and all that. Could you take it out during your discussions with them, or you found them?
Yeah. So
Okay,
in year X, you can take it out at the end of the year.
Okay.
The following year, you can add it back in, and no construction ever occurs overnight.
Okay.
And as we've been told, you can go and see. Now they submit permits for things like this. You know when people are building.
Okay.
We know when people are building.
Okay.
We knew when Kevin was building. We knew when Dollar General was building.
Did they give you any timelines? I'm sorry. Did they give you any timelines on creating the new TIF? Because I think that takes longer. The amendment doesn't take very long to create.
Same.
One takes
The same.
real.
We have to write. You have to expand. You do economic development plan. You write it. We've written 2 of those before. It's not an extensive plan. It's very doable. Yeah.
Last question. I'd be interested in meeting with you and Bill to be educated a little bit more on TIFs. How I could work with the town and understand. I mean, I've got a lot of land in there that, and I talk to developers and whatnot, but if I
So
understood
here's-
it a little bit more.
Yeah, there's so much that everyone needs to learn. And I am learning by what I don't know
Right.
each day. But here's one thing I'd ask, you can take away, any developer owns land takes away. If you're thinking of doing something, tell us as early as possible. If you're thinking of doing something, because again, our TIFs right now are on the tail end.
Yeah.
Hypothetically, 3 years from now, you decide to do something that's commercial or just fits in with our development. And you say, I want you to help us with utilities, and it's $300,000. You're not going to get it from us. Because we only have 7 years left, and you'd have to be putting a $20 million property on for us to recover that.
Is there a size? Properties that you?
No, it's really the final value of the property when it's done, whatever the business or whatever you're doing with that. And you know, I can tell you the rule of thumb, because you're talking residential, we have been very, very good as a town doing condo associations and PUDs. Those count. The Cove, Maple Ridge, they have been the huge generators that allowed us to do things like Kevin's work. So if you're thinking along a development lines, I would think along the lines of a condo, and just look at Maple Ridge. Those don't look like condos, but they are. You do that and you do a PUD, just the Van Hawk property may probably go to a PUD that would qualify and be in. So that's the only advice I can give you right now.
Any others?
Just as a Culver citizen, I want to make a couple comments. I'm married to Paul Benedictus, so,
Sorry to hear that.
Our sympathies.
so I'm familiar with this TIF stuff more than any of you. And I've basically seen him go from utter despair to just being hugely angry at how horribly, horribly mismanaged it's been. I just don't want, this is part of my concern, I don't want all the verbiage, typical Culver verbiage, to get squishy about, oh, it's really nobody's fault, or nobody understood, or they didn't do it on purpose. This is a minimum of a $500,000 loss to this town. $500,000. And Paul only calculated from 2017 to present. So everything from when the TIF started to 2017 is a whole other number. So it could be millions of dollars. And as a Culver citizen, I want my money back. That's a project that can't get done. That's a grant that can't be made. That undercuts everything CRC does. And if this were the real world, and I get it, Culver is not the real world. We're somewhere between, the Wizard of Oz and the Twilight Zone. But if this were the real world, people who caused this would be out on their respective ears, and we would be talking about suing them. And they would have cost our little company that much money. It's not an oopsie. It is a major, major deal. And that's why people are bonded. And I would like to see, as a potential next step of many next steps you have to do, looking into tapping into the bonds of people who through neglect, stupidity, indifference, a desire to save a couple of bucks from big utility. I would like to see potentially what we can get from the bonds to pay ourselves back for the money that was lost.
Anyone else have any citizen input? Any member input?
Yeah, I would, the Main Street, that sewage project, those grates are still loose. And I just, if you owe the contractor money, let's hold on to it. I've noticed it's still making noise, and it just doesn't look like the project's finished.
That's good. We'll continue to, I know Bob had contacted him. Yeah, and Don, do you have anything?
I have nothing, thank you.
You know, and I have nothing. So do I have a motion to adjourn to claims?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.